This ESPN podcast is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com.
The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects. The BS Report. The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Welcome to a very special multimedia edition of the BS Report. I'm Bill Simmons. That's Jalen Rose. How are you, buddy?
What's happening?
This is a good one. I like this question. If the Raptors make round 3, will this be the greatest moment in Raptors history? You know what? This was so important. We actually spun this question off into its own segment with Drake, the most famous person. Is he the most famous person in history of Toronto?
Well, he's representing the T-Dot to the fullest. They put some players out here recently that have been productive in college and getting towards the pros.
Yeah.
You got Wiggins. Anthony Bennett was the #1 pick. Nick Stauskas, Tyler Ennis at Syracuse. So,
did you mention Wiggins? You did, right?
I did.
Anthony Bennett?
I did.
Did I just black out for 5 seconds? Anyway, we're going to run this clip of us and Drake. You talk about the greatest moments in Toronto basketball history. Mm-hmm. The most famous one is probably Vince missing that shot against Iverson in Game 7, and then Kobe scoring 81.
Yeah.
Oh, that
did happen.
You were on the court that day.
That did happen.
Oh, I forgot.
What?
I see what was happening.
But you know what?
Those are probably the 2 most famous Toronto moments, right? Is there another one?
Well, Vince winning the slam dunk competition was a big one for us, I would say.
Okay. Vince was the most popular player in the league for years.
Sure. I mean, we had
leading vote getter,
but circling around.
McGrady and Vince playing together,
no
that
doubt.
was huge.
Well, that's
Damon Stoudemire was balling.
That's the great tragedy.
I know, but still, it's.
But my point is, like, if they make round 3,
half full.
These fans are going to be out of their minds. They've been waiting for this for 20 years.
It's. I mean, the loyalty and the support in Toronto, period. You know, whether you're talking Raptors, whether you're talking Leafs, whether you're talking even Toronto FC at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, we are. I always say it reminds me of college sports, the way how supportive and how patriotic everybody is, you know, how intense the fans can be. It's just that, you know, the teams have to perform for them to really be able to, you know, start talking the way they want to talk and acting the way they want to act. But, you know, I mean, the Raptors are giving them every reason to. So,
and it's been tough for them to sign players because you have to pay Uncle Sam and Queen Elizabeth. And now when you're in the States, however, the other 29 teams, they're based in the U.S., so we kind of forget about Toronto.
It's up to us, you know, to now build on what we have. And what we have, you know, maybe a few months ago, I would have been like, well, we really got to build on what we have, like, you know, it ain't so bad when you really take a look at it. I mean, it's incredible.
And that's what you've been able to do. I remember seeing your replacement girl video from a friend of mine named Hottie in 2006.
You have, like,
true
you're
story.
Going in the vault today, man.
I played in the T-Dot. You know, a lot of times you see people in the States, they really don't understand what's going on that side. And I try to tell him, we need to get there during the playoffs because we'll have a lot of fun.
You'll have a blast.
I'm rooting for T-Dot.
Yes.
Stay tuned. All right, there are 5 title favorites: Indiana, Miami, San Antonio, Oklahoma City, and the Clippers. And Indiana, you're lucky I included you in that group. I did it just because Jalen loves Naptown and loves the legend, and I love the legend. Outside that top 5, who do you think is a sleeper?
At that point, I'm going for best players. So the 2 best players that you didn't mention are James Harden and Stephen Curry. So that'll have to be Houston and Golden State. Because when you have players that could take over a series, and then you throw Dwight Howard in the mix, depending on his health, that may can get you 20-20 in the game, Houston has to be in that conversation. Same with Golden State. We see how Steph Curry can get hot with the best of them. All of a sudden start opening up for the rest of the guys, Harrison Barnes. If he's going to play like he played in last year's playoffs, those will be those 2 teams.
Similar teams, too, right? Offensively, ridiculously explosive. I'm going to say you won't shakily coached, I think, on both sides. I don't love the defense for Houston. I think Golden State can get really bogged down offensively, which is strange for the talent they have. You always get this weird sense of them that they're underachieving at times, even though they're probably not that great. But I think the one thing that would scare me about each team in a series, is a weird thing to say, but you only have to win 4 games in a series, obviously. And each team has a guy who could win 2 games by himself, right? Curry can win 2 games by himself. Harden can win 2 games by himself. Houston also has that other wrinkle of Dwight will have that game where he goes 38-22 and just destroy. And you might not win that game, but it's going to happen. And then they could get the Chandler Parsons 10 3-pointers game. And so could Golden State with Klay Thompson.
Correct.
So I think from a sleeper standpoint, you were correct. because both of those teams could just get hot 4 times in 7 games.
And in the West, it means so much based on who you're matched up against.
Right.
And those 2 teams, you're correct. While they can get stops when needed, I think their best players are offensively driven.
But Golden State, if they play the Clippers in round 1,
that's a great matchup.
That's a nice matchup for them. Because they'll basically go like this. They'll fight each other. It'll come down to some threes and some big shots. They could win that series.
Correct.
In the East, do we see a sleeper?
No.
Do we see a napper?
No. Indiana, Miami. I appreciate what the Bulls are doing, but we all know they needed another player with Derrick Rose if they were going to win the East.
I think there's a really good chance that we could see a version of what happened with Memphis last year, where there's a team in the conference finals playing Miami, and all of us are looking around going, wow, really? That could be Brooklyn, it could be Chicago, it could be Toronto, it could be freaking Charlotte.
No, it couldn't.
I was trying to sound more excited. I was trying to drum up pitches to the playoffs.
If it was going to be a team, it would be the Nets, because they can score.
I'm not ruling out Chicago. Do we think Derrick Rose comes back?
Derrick Rose, I think, does not play again this year. You can't go into another offseason with Rose being injured. You have to go into this offseason with him on the upswing.
My thing with this is, in a playoff series, this is not rocket science. Usually the best player wins the series. Very rarely do you see a team have the best player. I think one example is like 09 Cleveland versus 09 Orlando. And LeBron was the best player in that series. And he was incredible in that playoffs, and they didn't win the series. So it's not like it doesn't happen. But for the most part, whoever's the dominant alpha dog of the series wins. Like Joakim Noah last year against the Nets. Won Game 7 for him. He was the best player in that series. That's why they won the series. I mean, there were a lot of other reasons, but ultimately they had the best player. I think Kyle Lowry, I know this is crazy, but I'm voting him for third-team All-NBA. That's a guy in the playoffs against the right team. I feel like could be the best guy in a series.
I've been defending Kyle Lowry for a long time.
Yes.
Because as a combination guard, sometimes I know it's hard to find that fit. And he never really fit in Houston, his last team. But I agree with you. He is a guy that could get you 25, 30. DeRozan can too. Terrence Ross can explode. Teams that can score in the playoffs, like you said earlier, are the ones that you look up, all of a sudden, each guy's won a game, and all of a sudden you just need one more to close out the series.
That's why I think they're a napper, and there's one more reason why I think they're a napper. I think their playoff crowds are going to be insane.
They will be.
That is the one. You look at all the East, and you go through all the teams like Washington, they'll be all right.
Atlanta,
they'll be terrible. Charlotte, You just go down the list. Toronto, they're going to sell out. Those fans will be there an hour before the game. It's going to be the most important basketball moment of everyone's life for them to try to get to round 3. We talked about this with Drake. It's not like Toronto's had a fun basketball history the last 20 years. Like, if they feel like they have a chance to get to the conference finals, this is the biggest moment in Toronto Raptors history. I think it's going to be really tough to win there.
And ding, 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 ding. Toronto doesn't close. That means the traveling team
so this is the wisdom
is going to be at a disadvantage when they get to the T-dot.
So here's what you get when you play Toronto. You got to worry about your passport.
You got to go. It's
hard to get in and out. It's a pain in the butt. It's like going to a foreign country, basically. Then it doesn't close. Hey, guys, just be careful, right? We're in the playoffs. The city doesn't close. Yeah, we got it, coach. Let's go out. And then on top of that, you're going to have crazy, crazy fans.
Insane.
Yeah. So one of my predictions for the playoffs is that Toronto's fans, there was one year where Portland's fans were awesome in the playoffs, like one of those Brandon Roy years, and everyone was like, wow, Portland has awesome fans. I think Toronto's fans come through. I think they're a napper, and I'm with you. I think Houston and Golden State are sleepers.
Yep.
They're not going to win the title, but I think they could win a couple rounds, potentially sneak into round 3. We will see. You know, Axe cares about peace and harmony. You know what gives me peace and harmony?
Talking about the Lakers struggling.
When the Clippers and Lakers switch bodies. Have they switched bodies, Jalen?
No, they have not. The Lakers still run Los Angeles. They have 16 championships.
Is that why we have so many potholes?
The history of their organization is NBA lore. Mm-hmm. You're a Celtic fan.
Yeah.
You could appreciate the history of the Lakers.
Can I tell you something? We made all of these arguments in the mid-'90s. after Bird and McHale Parrish retired and Reggie Lewis died, and we were like, it's going to be fine.
Well, let's just
we'll be
real.
fine. We're the Celtics. We've had 45 straight years of being great. It'll be okay, everybody.
Well, no.
And then it was 15 years past before we were in the finals again.
We're not going to compare the Lakers to the Celtics.
I'm just saying, I made that argument.
Because here's why. Because you guys won 11 of your rings when there were 8 teams in the league. Okay. And you've won 6 since, 1960.
I don't know if it matters anymore.
Oh, it matters.
Who the franchise is. Because I think what's happened, especially with parity and with the league pass, like, who's the most popular team right now? If you go to a game, it's Oklahoma City. That's the same team where you see the most jerseys.
What's changed about the Lakers is that they don't have an identity right now.
Now, dig a little deeper. Something's changed.
Ownership. Dr. Jerry Buss passed.
Ding, ding.
That was
this whole time.
That's their identity, Bill.
They had Jack Kent Cooke, who was a great owner. They had Dr. Jerry Buss, greatest owner in the history of basketball. Best owner ever. Smartest, best success.
Forward
Everybody
thinker.
who owned a team said in a meeting he was the guy who would always have the best thought, comment, idea.
And
he
also
goes away, and he hands the team over to his son, who is the lead character in Tommy Boy.
And you go to these arenas and you see things like restaurants and bars and people watching the game. The Forum Club was way ahead of its time doing that.
Oh, so you're appreciating the good doctor for the other stuff.
I'm just saying that helped grow the league.
And grow the U.S. population.
So for a team that does not have that identity,
or the owner,
that's what they're struggling with.
See, I think the key to sports in a lot of ways, I mean, we always talk about basketball. You got to get the lottery pick. You got to get the franchise guy. If you're poorly run, it's really tough. I mean, even the Clippers, it took them forever, right? And the only reason things turned around for them, there are 2 reasons. They won the lottery and got Blake Griffin. That has nothing to do with your owner. They won the lottery during the year when there was a franchise player. And then Chris Paul wanted to play in L.A., and he tried to go to the Lakers. David Stern vetoed the deal. If David Stern doesn't veto that deal, this Clippers thing never happens.
Correct.
So you have 2 of the most fortuitous things that could have happened to you at the same time. And now Donald Sterling, who's an old guy, is like, wow, this is great. I have 2 of the best 10 players in the league. Doesn't mean he's a good owner.
I might as well trade for Doc Rivers. I might as well re-sign DeAndre Jordan. I might as well acquire Jamal Crawford.
Yeah, he finally started to spend money. I don't think the Lakers, I don't think it turns around for them unless they get a stroke of luck along the lines of winning the lottery and Andrew Wiggins turns into a franchise guy. Kevin Durant saying, my contract's up. I want to live in L.A. and I want to play for the Lakers and turn you around. They're going to need something like that because
Kevin Love?
Well, we don't know. Kevin Love's never been 500.
I think a lot of players that probably would lean more heavily to trying to turn around the Lakers or take another look also at the Knicks now that Phil Jackson is there.
But if you're a player and you could go anywhere you want, you're going to get paid the same anyway, and you could pick your team, are you really going to pick the team that's poorly run? The team that just let Phil Jackson go when they that whole thing, they picked D'Antoni over him? He was going to come back.
And that's
they signed Kobe to $24 million a year, and they didn't know if he could play?
But when you say, have they switched bodies? No, because one has 16 championships and one has none.
They've switched bodies.
The Clippers still got a lot of work to do, and I'm pretty sure they'll admit that.
Showtime has changed identity. Showtime is now in Clipperland.
No.
Yeah. Just remember when you're asking me for tickets for one of these playoff games, Jalen. I watched a lot of basketball with Jalen because we work together. We host Countdown. We spend a lot of time in the green room just watching multiple games at once as Jalen looks at the sideline reporters and goes, who is that?
And that's why we need some Axe body spray.
In case you run into one of the sideline reporters?
We got the body. We need the spray.
But one of the things you always do is you'll see somebody or something or some interview or somebody has a good game and you'll go, I'm happy for him. Let's make a starting 5 of people we're happy for that made the playoffs. Who is your I'm happy for him starting 5?
Number 1 is Sean Livingston.
Oh, me too. He's the MVP.
Right?
He's a unanimous MVP.
A top 5 pick. And if you haven't seen the gruesome video of basically his knee snapping like a toothpick when he played for the Clippers, check that out so you can see how far he's come.
And you know what? You were in the league. I actually had Clipper season tickets and was going to the games those first couple years with him. And I really feel like if you replayed his career 10 times, like 7 of the times it would have ended really, really well with like multiple All-Stars and stuff like that. This was like the 10th out of 10 time Sam Cassell comes in. He loses his confidence. Sam Cassell, who I think was a good veteran in a lot of ways, but also wanted to start. And now you got him come off the bench. You got Mike Dunleavy yelling at him. He doesn't know whether to go fast or slow. And now all of a sudden it's year 3. He hasn't really developed into what he was going to, and then he blows out his knee, and he's basically out of the league.
And also, he's a 6'7" point guard, which is hard to do in this league. That's why you've only seen Magic, Steve Smith, Penny Hardaway actually be able to transform playing it in college and play it in the league.
Watching him when he was 19, the two things jumped out other than his size. He was a great passer.
Yep.
And that's like, he had the passing gene, you could see it. And he had a great feel for the game. He wasn't like one of those guys who like seemed like he learned how to play in the AAU. It was just his general, everything he could do. Almost a little like how Jabari, when you watch Jabari and you go, oh, that guy would be fun to play with. That's how I always felt about Sean Livingston.
Now, the way he's playing with the Nets, the thing that's turned around their season is that they gave him the ball.
Right.
And he took it out of Deron Williams' hands.
Yeah.
Now, that was a dynamic that team had been struggling with the last couple of years because D. Will has been inconsistent. He necessarily wasn't the strongest leader for that franchise.
Wow, you really sugarcoated that one. He had no leadership whatsoever.
And so you add this guy, he makes it all right. The first thing I said when Jason Kidd got the job is the person that's going to be the most happy is him. Because I knew Jason Kidd, as a former point guard, was going to love his skills and get him involved.
I thought the person who was going to be the most happy was the people who didn't care if practice started on time, because he's late 10 times a year.
I got something for you guys to watch as it relates to Sean Livingston.
Okay.
You can't tell me Phil Jackson don't want to put him in the triangle. Stay tuned.
Ooh, I like when you drop little dimes when it seems like you might have knowledge for stuff. Here's another one that has to be on our list. Big Al.
Big Al!
Another guy who I randomly watched a lot of early in his career. And another guy that if you played his career 10 times, I feel like the worst case scenario happened. Kept getting these little nagging injuries those first couple Boston years. Every time he was coming on, something happened. He tweaked his knee, hurt a calf, whatever. Then he's on a lottery team. Then they trade him for KG to Minnesota. Then he's on crappy Minnesota teams. Just as that's come along, blows out his knee. Then they trade him to Utah. Then he's stuck on these mediocre Utah teams in a really good Western Conference, signs with Charlotte, and now he's getting his due.
He really is. And we talk a lot about the lost art of the post game and of the center. He and Brook Lopez got post moves better than any bigs in the game.
Yeah, and he's better than Brook Lopez.
He got up and unders. He could turn over both shoulders. He got a face-up little jump shot. He got a face-up fake where he could go either way. He's a legitimate 20-point-a-night scorer. Plus, he's going to get you 10-plus rebounds. You got to double and triple team that guy. So now watch Charlotte continue to build their roster of guys that could just be catch-and-shoot players.
Right.
So you got Kemba Walker, who's a penetrator who can get you points and play off the dribble. Kid Gilchrist is not a shooter. He's a defender. So now look for them to build a team that it just surrounds shooters around Al Jefferson.
And I really liked when they signed Al Jefferson because I thought it was a fair price for somebody who has to be double-teamed. Mm-hmm. Not to toot my own horn, because I also liked what Detroit did with Josh Smith. So I'm not saying how it was great every time. But in Al Jefferson's case, it's like at least you could point to this one thing and say, this guy's so good in the low post, at the end of the games, you have to send a second guy or he's going to score. And I also think he has an extra gear. I think in the playoffs, especially if he plays the right team, I think he's going to be in the 28 to 30, and he'll get fouled a lot, and he'll be double-teamed.
His extra gear is he's going against all centers that can't score on the post.
Yep.
So he gets to rest on defense.
Right. And he's not a good defensive player.
Let's talk about the top teams in the league, and let's say who their centers are.
Birdman Anderson.
He can guard him and rest on D.
Ray Hibbert.
Resting on D.
Ray Hibbert's resting also. I think
9-4 in March.
Yeah.
He got to get it together.
Come on, Ray Hibbert. But yeah, you go down the line, the Plumlee, whatever the Nets Plumlee is. Which Plumlee?
Just call him Plums.
Malayson Plumlee. Another guy I'm very happy for, Paul Pierce.
Yep.
Just because
the truth.
It really just seemed like the all-time worst-case scenario. Leaves Boston, goes to this crazy Nets situation. They go in the tank early, and it's just like, man, this stinks. I didn't want Paul Pierce's career to end this way. And then it flipped.
Then it flipped. And he deservedly didn't allow himself to go into the tank because emotionally, that could have got ugly in late December.
It kind of did. I mean, he was kind of on the fringe, right? You know him a little bit. Like
Thank God for the Eastern Conference.
Thank God.
You're never out of it.
We keep saying that. Another guy I'm happy for, who I think should be on our starting five, Mr. Dirk Nowitzki.
Captain Dirk.
Wins the 2011 finals. Does not make the playoffs the next 2 years.
He goes through Brandon Roy and Aldridge. He goes through Russell Westbrook and KD. He goes through Kobe and Gasol. He goes through a snickering LeBron and Wade. Dirk to win his championship. Now that's a road.
Do we have a fifth guy for the I'm happy for him starting five? Can I say Jimmer Fredette? I still feel like he's going to have a moment.
No, it ain't Jimmer. It's Joe.
Jimmer!
It's Joakim Noah.
Okay.
This guy, whether they have Dang in or out of the lineup, Rose in or out of the lineup, he epitomizes his coach besides Pop and Tim and probably Dirk and Carlisle. Their relationship to me, beyond perimeter players, is an awesome flow to how that center or big guy is the personality of the coach on the floor.
Here's why I'm thinking about vetoing that pick. I'll give you a couple reasons. One, he makes like $13 million a year. Two, he's going to be first-team All-NBA this year for the center position. Three, it seems like he does okay in the female department. And I'm understating.
I'm jealous of his hair.
It's something about that dude, man. When we filmed that commercial with him, all the women who were working the commercials, it's like he's got some sort of vibe. I think his dad probably was tutoring him since he was 10 or something. But on the other hand, I am happy for him because Derrick Rose goes down. They think they're going to win the title. They go into that season, they're like Indiana, like, we're winning the title. Derrick Rose goes down. They trade Dang. They're totally happy to go in the lottery. And Noah and Tibbs were just like, no, we're making the playoffs.
And they show up and they're competitive, and it's because of his leadership.
Yeah.
So I'm happy for him.
Me too. That's our starting five. The all I'm happy for them team. If LeBron wins his third straight title, will he officially be the greatest forward of all time? This kills me because Larry Bird is the greatest forward of all time. I love Larry Bird, dramatic impact on my life. He's the man who got Jalen Rose a lot of money in Indiana, played him in crunch time in the finals, turned his career around.
3 Eastern Conference Finals, the only trip that the Pacers have taken to the NBA Finals. Larry Bird was the head coach.
Or the GM.
You know, some of the best games that I played in were actually when Larry returned to play against the Celtics.
Oh, yeah.
As our coach.
You loved coming back there for the legend.
At half court, I used to always write LB33 on the floor in a marker.
So here's the problem with Bird. Greatest forward of all time. Really only came into the league in 1979, had an unbelievable 9-year run through 88, got hurt, missed a season, came back, played 3 more years, not the same level, but really good, then retired. 13 years in all, but missed one. LeBron is now finishing up his 11th year.
Yeah.
4 MVPs, 2 titles, potentially a 3rd title now. Bird only won 3 titles. He's won more MVPs than Bird. He's been much more durable than Bird. He's a better two-way player than Bird.
Are you finished?
His stats are a little better than Bird.
All right, yes. The answer to the question is yes. Man. What's the next question?
Well, can we mourn the legend a little bit? I mean, he had a nice run as the greatest forward. He had a 22-year run as the best forward.
But still, though, he's the only guy to be Executive of the Year, Coach of the Year, MVP, champion.
And he walked across the Charles River once in 1987. Nobody saw that. There's no video footage. But is LeBron? Let's say LeBron wins the title. He is now one of the top 5 greatest players of all time if that happens. Even I would have to admit that. I also think he would pass Magic because Magic, he came in the league in 79 as well. He played all the way through 91. He had a 12-year run. So LeBron's played 1 less year than Magic did, basically.
This is a 20-second timeout for NBA fans.
Yeah.
Not Magic yet.
Not Magic yet?
No.
Because I always had Bird and Magic. I had Magic slightly ahead of Bird just because he played, I think, 2 more years.
But as a Celtic fan, you forget that Magic actually won 5 rings to Bird's 3.
Yeah, but he had Kareem.
But he had Parrish and McHale.
3 MVPs.
And DJ.
3 MVPs for Magic. We'd have 4 for LeBron. 3 finals that he basically won as the best player on the team every time. Magic only won the finals twice as the best player on the team.
Not
It's
passing
at least an
Magic
argument.
just yet. But that's why the question is about forward,
Right.
not player.
So I would have my top 5, Jordan 1, Russell 2, Kareem 3, Magic 4.
I have those 4 in a different order, but for the most part, those,
Magic 4, Bird 5, Wilt 6.
Yeah, that's
I think
Mount Rushmore, pretty much.
I think LeBron is now in the top 6. And I think if he wins a 3rd title, I think he climbs dead even with Magic and slightly ahead of Bird.
Kobe has to get an honorable mention here.
1 MVP his whole career.
But he still has to get an honorable mention.
First 3 titles, Shaq was the best player on the team.
I know, but there are some that felt like when LeBron left Cleveland, he came to join Dwayne Wade's team. So some people take some stock out of probably their first ring,
Wow.
even though he was the Finals MVP. But, again, as we sit today, 4-time MVP, 2-time champion. Not passing Larry today.
Has to win another title.
Yes.
If he doesn't win the title, I think they're still dead even. So now I'm ready for Miami not to win the title. Come on, everybody else. Hey, Jalen, we've done so many playoff questions here. I totally forgot to mention our friends from Subway.
Thanks for dishing that crisp, hard-hitting commentary, Bill. And speaking of crisp, head down to Subway for the crispy, cheesy new Flattizza. With a lineup like cheese, pepperoni, spicy Italian, and veggie, these classics have plenty of delicious depth. We're talking super crispy flatbreads topped with signature marinara, melty mozzarella, and made the way you say. It's more than just a slice. And right now, you can get in on the Flattizza phenomenon for an introductory price. 2 for only $5. So stop by Subway for the latest fresh taste today. Subway, eat fresh.
I love to eat fresh. Anyway, next question. What playoff team is the best candidate for a panic trade if they get bounced early? I like this one. This is a good question. It's got to be West
trade,
Coast.
It has to be West
Oh, no,
Coast
you know
because the
what?
stakes are higher.
West Coast or Indiana. I think Indiana, if they lose in round 2, that's a panic trade team.
I have to see what happens with Harrison Barnes this playoff.
He was on my panic trade radar. Because he's only like 20. Isn't he 20 or 21? He's pretty young.
He's still a young player who, while he had a pretty good college career, he didn't turn it out like he should.
He fades out of games. You're like, is Harrison Barnes out there? He's been out there the whole quarter?
Yes.
Was he playing?
Correct. And I wouldn't necessarily call that a panic trade, but what it is you hate to see a guy with that potential not live up to his potential.
He's a stretch four. He's not a small forward.
That's a player I watch for.
There's no chance of a Westbrook panic trade, right?
No way. He's one of the best players in the whole league.
What if they lose in round 2? No chance?
He's had 3 surgeries in 11 months, and he's out there tip dunking and pushing the ball up the floor and playing hard as anybody in the league. They are not trading him.
So I should stop making Rondo for Westbrook trades in the ESPN trade machine? What if I throw in a draft pick?
That is not.
How about a draft pick? They did trade James Harden for Jeremy Lamb and Steven Adams.
That's another reason why they're not doing it.
Yeah, they never traded Westbrook. The Clippers, I don't think they are a panic trade candidate. Houston, unless it was Chandler Parsons in a sign-and trade, I don't see that.
He helped you get Dwight Howard there. They have the same age, and they're not trading Chandler Parsons.
Portland doesn't trade Aldridge or Lillard.
No.
Indiana.
I wouldn't consider a trade to improve their offensive scoring a panic trade. And I'm looking at Roy Hibbert.
Oh. Well, I think Roy Hibbert might be our answer.
He creates a distinct style of play based on his mobility. He's a defensive center that can block shots, not really cleaning the boards like he should, not really scoring on the posts like you would hope he does.
I'm buying low on Roy Hibbert this summer. I still think on the right team he'd be good.
So here's my point, though. When he's in the paint, that means there's no room for Lance or Paul George to drive.
Yep.
And so
you want Indiana to be doing this?
I want Indiana to be a running team if they can't win being a power team.
Right. Portland tried to sign Roy Hibbert. They gave him a lot of money. Restricted free agent offer, didn't get him. And they have Robin Lopez.
And if you look at their statistics, they're probably the same.
Robin Lopez and Roy Hibbert?
Roy Hibbert.
But Roy Hibbert, I mean, the one thing he does is protect the rim better than anybody else in the league.
All right, let me take it from a score.
But I'm just throwing the advanced metrics at you. He's the best at it.
Let me throw the basketball gym shoes squeaking, the music is off in the arena knowledge at you.
Oh, are you going eye test on me?
Yes, indeed.
Oh.
A score.
Hold on. The eye test sign just popped out.
Okay.
Wow.
One of the
There
most
it is.
overrated things in basketball are block shot numbers and steal numbers. Okay. Normally, a guy that gets a lot of steals has to do a lot of gambling. And as a scorer, I love a guy that's in the backcourt trying to hound the outlet pass, and I'm up the floor getting an open shot. A great shot blocker is going to block 3 a game.
Yep.
We taking 75 shots.
Yeah. Well, but it's about the 13 that you're affecting.
Okay, so when he's affecting shots, you know what else that leaves room for sometimes? Offensive rebound lanes. So when you're doing your advanced metrics, every time he go try to contest a shot and he misses it, and I throw it off the backboard, and my guy just tips it in, that counts as a win for us also.
I love all the information. I love advanced metrics. I love the eye test. I like adding it all into one giant stew. But I do think with the advanced metrics sometimes there's little holes that they can miss. Like, for instance, if you're somebody like Carmelo, and you're in a team that time after time again you have to shoot with 4 seconds left in the shot clock because everybody else just stood around and you have the worst backcourt in the league and you have no point guard, you're not running, that's going to affect your stats, and you have this unholy offensive burden. Whereas if you put him on, I don't know, some team that used him 17, 18 shots a game, just ran him off picks, they fast break, like his stats would be different. That's got to matter.
And also, not a panic trade, but would this be a panic move? And this is a great question. I'm glad you steered me here. Would it be a panic move for Carmelo Anthony to leave the Knicks?
And Phil Jackson. If I was him, I would flee. I would be out. I'd be out. I'd go to Houston. So my answer is no.
The reason why that falls in a panic mode is because you're leaving $30 million on the table.
No, but you've gone over this.
I have.
You're really leaving 15.
You're really leaving 15. You're going to no state taxes. But the bottom line is you're leaving another year on the table. Which, by the way, you could play a couple of years and they could still extend you. And you could get it back Dwight Howard style. So
I just don't see how that team gets better.
That's what I'm watching for. As opposed to a panic trade with like Hibbert or Barnes, I'm watching to see what happens with Carmelo Anthony and the Knicks.
No chance Westbrook gets traded.
No.
No chance at all.
Especially to Boston. Stop it.
All right, Rondo.
Jeff Green.
Rondo. Jeff Green, I'll give Jeff Green back.
The rights to Larry Bird in the 80s.
We had some Brooklyn picks. Well, this playoff preview has been going on forever, and I feel like we've already kind of sort of answered this question, so let's answer it officially before Jalen hits me with that bat. What would be the greatest possible finals for 2014? Your
Oklahoma City versus Miami. You get the two best players, the two top candidates for MVP, going at it for their second NBA final. We're going to talk about rivalries till we're blue in the face. When two top players play in opposite conferences and only play against each other twice in 9 months.
And play the same position.
The only way they could truly have a rivalry that harkens us back to the 80s when it was Bird and Magic playing in the finals 8 out of 10 times is to play for championships.
I'm going to throw a couple possible finals out there just to whet your appetite. San Antonio, Miami, a rematch. San Antonio flipping the script after the most traumatic finals loss since a long time, and then they get redemption. They win it back. Duncan goes out. Popovich, big hug. Oh, love you, man. Do that whole thing. That would be awesome.
That would be terrific. And the storyline that no one talked about all year, as we were talking about Indiana wanting to get the number 1 seed, is how it could affect the Spurs if they got the number 1 seed. Because Game 6 and 7 last year, we were in
South Beach.
Yes. This year, if it's in San Antonio, that could be interesting.
You know what else could be interesting? The 7 pounds you and I are going to gain if the finals are in Texas. I wouldn't sleep on a Miami Clippers series and how awesome that would be.
Now, that would be the most fun.
That'd be the most fun and probably the one with the best chance of getting us fired or divorced.
So we don't need that. We don't need that. We don't need that one. No no Clippers, no Heat.
That's the one where that's my TMZ sports possible. The one that just coming back to haunt me. Let's transition to a second question. We're going to do a double bonus question for this one.
Okay.
Are you surprised the Spurs shook off the 2013 finals as well as they did?
To say you're surprised would mean you don't believe in Coach Pop. You don't think that Tim Duncan is one of the greatest players and champions that this league has seen. Because they don't seek the spotlight, it allows them to stay in the moment. For those that seek the spotlight, that are constantly on social media, constantly doing commercials, constantly doing public appearances, you get the ebbs and flows that affect your personality, which sometimes affect your performance. They constantly, like the engine that could.
Under the radar.
Just keep going. Just keep going. Kawhi, we're going to get him healthy. We're going to get Danny Green back. We're going to add Bellinelli as a three-point shooter.
We're going to use the regular season as an experimental.
Yes.
But somehow win anyway.
We're going to rest Manu when we need to. Tony's still one of the top players in the game. And you look up, they want the number one seed. They probably don't admit it, but I follow their box scores, and while they don't have a player that plays over 30 minutes on average, all of a sudden you look up, they've won 17, 18 straight games. You got to want to do that.
Right. And we did a game, we broadcast the Spurs-Lakers game last month, and we asked Popovich about whether it seemed like he was a little different this year with how he's using lineups, and he's really experimenting this year. And he said that last year they were a little taken surprise. They were a bigger team. They played Splitter and Duncan together a lot. And they were a little surprised with the Miami going small ball, and he realized that he hadn't tried enough lineups to see what was going to work and not work. And he wanted to use this season so that no matter who they played in whatever series, he knew, like, oh, I had that lineup. Oh, I tried that in March against this team. You know what? I'm going to play Bellinelli with Parker and Patty Mills because I did that again in this game. And he's almost like this mad scientist in a lab. I just really appreciate how he thinks about stuff like that because I think a lot of coaches just are like, roll the ball out. This is our team. Well, we had these guys. We got to play this way. He doesn't think that way.
And also, the thing I appreciate is that in order for them to win a championship and their style, they are going to have to be able to adjust to their opponent. So if they're going against teams that play smaller, Kawhi was terrific playing small ball 4 last year in the playoffs and in the finals against Miami. So now you have that versatility and that flexibility in the lineup. I am not surprised, just like I wouldn't be surprised if they make it to the NBA Finals. I wouldn't be surprised if they won it all.
I picked them to make the finals because I was tired of getting burned by the infrastructure. One other subplot with them that I want to throw out there, I haven't heard anybody mention this. Popovich took that Game 6 really hard.
He should. Tim Duncan was not in the game. Tim Duncan's your best rebounder, your best player.
They didn't get 1 rebound. Oh, 2 rebounds when he wasn't out there.
And he was playing great.
He was playing great.
That's the other thing. Over 30 points. He had over 15 rebounds. I would think, and this is probably why Pop feels the way you just described, that Tim gets one of those rebounds.
We were sitting there in disbelief. But, I mean, that's not why I brought that up. I think
we were like, "Where's Tim? They just came out of the huddle."
We thought he got hurt.
Where's Tony?
We thought he got hurt. But I think he took it really hard. I think he was affected by it. I think he spent a lot of time thinking about it. There was a story about how his daughter was like, "Can you get over it already? Like, come on, it happened 2 months ago." But I think for the Spurs, not that you don't want to win the title anyway, but I think that would be the cherry on the hot fudge sundae for them. To get the redemption for him, because I think they genuinely love the guy, and I think he was tormented by that finals last year.
And talk about winning a championship and dropping the mic. That's for the Spurs, because if they win, I wouldn't be surprised if that would be the last game for Coach Pop and Tim Duncan.
I wrote in 2010, somebody forwarded it to me. This was the game when Dragic destroyed them in the Phoenix thing and knocked them out. And I had this whole paragraph about, wow, what a great run by the Spurs. Like, wait, it has to end at some time, blah, blah, blah. This whole thing laid it out. It was 4 years ago. They're still chugging along.
Yes, indeed.
They probably should have made the 2012 finals. They made it in 2013. They're the heavy favorites, in my opinion, to make it in 2014. I still think too tough to beat. The one thing Oklahoma City is the worst matchup for them.
But also,
not only because Durant's the best player in that series, but just the athleticism. I think they'd have a lot of trouble with that.
Yeah, they would. And, We got to give Tim Duncan a little more credit here.
Amazing.
For a team that's won 50 straight games.
Year 18.
For that many years in a row, you need a real anchor.
What is he, 16, 50-win seasons?
Yes. And Tim Duncan has been that for the Spurs. And when you start making lists of top 10 players of all time, you got to consider putting him on there.
Well, so he spent 4 years in college, too. He was high school class in 93. What was your high school class?
91.
I mean, think about that. And think about all the miles that dude has on him. 4 years of college, all the playoff games he played, the Olympics, all that stuff. And it's interesting. Somebody was telling me he finishes the season, he goes back to the Virgin Islands, I think, and he does everything but play basketball. He swims, he rides bikes, he does all these things and just tries to stay in this lean, awesome shape, but doesn't use any of his basketball muscles. But I think the guy's a freak, and just to be a big guy and not lose your athleticism at that age, it's never happened before.
Ultimate
Even Garnett
professional.
lost it a little bit.
Yeah, and that's why Tim Duncan is one of the all-time greats, and he and Pop are reasons I'm not surprised they shook it off the way they did.
I have Duncan as either the 6th, 7th, or 8th best player of all time. And I actually think he has grabbed the upper hand back from Kobe being Bryant a little bit, because Kobe's now been petered out for a year and a half.
Well, something to be
these
said
guys
for,
were dead even.
Something to be said for consistency.
Yeah. Amazing. Tim Duncan. You love the term heat check.
With a passion.
You use it not just in basketball, but in other various points of life, even when people are eating and stuff.
Or a drink check.
Somebody orders a third vodka. Heat check. Who is the heat check guy? Who's the championship belt holder right now?
Okay, my definition of a heat check, back in the day when a guy made 2, he was going to shoot a third, and when he made the third, he's on fire!
He's on fire!
The definition is that you have to make several shots to be a heat check guy. That's too rational. A heat check guy, I shot 1, I'm J.R. Smith, I'm in Miami, and it's a 3 and it goes in. Well, you know what? I'm going to shoot 22 threes today. Okay? So I'm definitely shooting the next time I get it, whether it's on the line or whether it's 5 foot behind the line.
My definition of heat check is the guy makes 1, and now I'm solely judging it on reputation. It's ooh, the heat check sign just went on.
When you watch
what's going to happen?
When you watch NBA games, and Doug Collins talked about this, who's one of the best at calling games, is that there was a reason why KG jumps up and knocks the ball down when a guy shoots it after the whistle. Because great scorers, when they see the ball go in, whether it's from a free throw, a layup, or a jumper, it only takes 1. And all of a sudden, you're shooting the next one to see if you got something going right here.
Here's the other way I would define it. Let's say I'm not watching basketball. I'm home. I'm watching some movie with my wife, and the playoffs are on, and I'm TiVoing stuff to watch later. And you text me, and you say, blank name, heat check. How fast am I running to a TV to see what's happening? See, in my opinion, this is why Steph Curry is the championship belt holder right now. I think he's the number 1 heat check guy. If you text me and you say, Steph Curry heat check, I'm knocking things over to get to my television. You're saying Jamal Crawford, because you're using Steph Curry is just really good anyway.
He's a great player.
Jamal Crawford's whole career is about the heat check.
Correct.
So I guess maybe he's like the Intercontinental Championship belt heat check holder.
Because if you can say that about a player like Kevin Durant, who's a terrific shooter, or Steph Curry, or Larry Bird, but they're great players.
Yeah.
Okay, they're multiple All-Stars, potential Hall of Famers. Jamal Crawford has never played in an All-Star game. Okay.
So let's have 2 belts. We'll have the heat check championship belt, but then the Intercontinental heat check championship belt. Jamal Crawford's Intercontinental.
It's definitely Jamal Crawford. If you've ever been to a Clipper game, yes, Blake's half man, half amazing, the remix version of Vince Carter, all of that stuff. So full of action, he should be a verb. Then you got CP3, 2010, future Hall of Famer, all of that. But the crowd goes ooh and ah when Jamal Crawford gets in and he goes turbo and breaking, and he's breaking somebody down, and all of a sudden, boom, he makes a shot. How do you think a guy breaks an NBA record for made 3-pointers plus the foul. It's because you're taking shots that are contested, and you're still making them.
How many players in the 2014 playoffs could heat check somebody out of a series? Durant, Steph Curry,
Harden,
James Harden. LeBron's not a heat check guy.
He's not a heat
I
check
love
guy.
LeBron, but he's not.
He's a basketball player.
Yeah, he's a basketball player, but he's not one of those guys who can be like, I'm scoring 48 tonight.
Those are the answers.
Those three?
Yeah.
And J.R. Smith, if the Knicks make it? No.
Nah. What he did last year in the Celtics series, I think that team still has not recovered from the elbow against Jason Terry.
Can I throw one more heat check guy in there for the Intercontinental?
Marcus Thornton?
No, he's like not even Intercontinental belt. He's like the European WWE belt. European, whatever like the fakest belt is. No, I was going to say Kemba Walker. Round 1, Kemba Walker just starts to get hot. He could have like just a hot week and shoot somebody out of a series.
But the problem with the Kemba Walker answer, he did that in college, though.
He did.
Big props to him doing it in college.
He did it in college.
But he's going to go against good defensive teams in Miami or Indiana.
Would you call Dragic a heat check guy?
No, he's just
a basketball player.
And also, heat check is shooting the ball, not necessarily driving the ball or dunking the ball.
The best player who is a heat check guy of all time, I think, is Larry Bird.
That's why I use him as an example.
Well, because you could actually like see the flames coming off his body when it started to happen. And then he would kind of just take more and more ridiculous shots to see how hot he was.
Larry Bird is not the answer to that question.
Who is it?
Dominique Wilkins is the answer to
Over
that
Larry
question.
Bird?
Yes.
My answer to that answer is Game 7, 1988 Eastern Conference Finals, a double heat check. And Larry's team won.
Yes.
So Larry, they settled the belt.
Correct.
So switch your answer.
No.
In the 2005 playoffs, a center on Seattle named Jerome James had a big playoff series. And I joked in my column how funny it was going to be when Isaiah Thomas overpaid him on the Knicks and gave him a big fat contract. And then it actually happened. It's in my archives and everything. I think he gave him $30 million for 5 years. But this seems to be a playoff tradition. The Jerome James Award, I guess we could call it. Who is most likely to get overpaid based on a strong performance in the 2014 playoffs?
Austin Crozier.
Oh, he was a great example. You helped make Austin Crozier an extra $20 million.
He was a player that probably didn't average double figures all year.
And was playing crunch time on a 2000 finals team.
Correct. And probably that was the most he's averaged. So, to your point, that means pedestrian regular season, average more in the playoffs, and then because you average that in the playoffs, you never really average that again.
Could Jermaine O'Neal be eligible for this?
He's eligible for this conversation.
Could he get a 3-year deal out of this, even though he's 45?
There you go. He's eligible for this conversation.
How about Chandler Parsons?
He's a good player that they're going to take care of anyway.
Okay, but if he's a restricted free agent, let's say he gets hot, they win 2 rounds, and he's 3 of 6 every game from 3, and somebody says, he's a max guy. We're going to give him the max contract. He's not a max guy.
There was a song that say, looked up and down, said, I'll take her. You let him go. Somebody gonna give him that kind of money? Thanks for bringing us Dwight. We appreciate your service.
Good luck, Chandler.
Congratulations.
How about Sergeant Vincent Lamar Carter?
They're going to pay him anyway. They like what he's doing there, averaging around 12 points.
Really good the last couple months of the season.
They're averaging, they liking what he do there. How about a guy like...
I got one more for you. You're not going to like it because you genuinely like this guy as a person and as a player and as a comeback story. Sean Livingston.
They're going to pay him anyway.
Okay, but it doesn't matter who the person gets paid from. What if he ends up playing crunch time for them and they make it to the conference finals and Prokhorov says, we must not lose him. We must give him $12 million a year. We no lose Livingston.
He could be a candidate for this conversation.
That's the worst Russian accent anyone's ever done.
It was. That was terrible.
It was terrible. I got one more for you. Kyle Lowry, free agent.
He's going to get broke off anyway because of what they've already accomplished.
He's not a max guy, though.
No, he's not a max guy.
What if they make it to the conference finals and he says, I want the max or I'm going? And everyone in Toronto says, this is the first happy moment of my life as a basketball fan. We're not letting this guy go, right?
His market value is already set pretty much to me.
I think the answer is Sean Livingston. And not because I don't think he's a good basketball player. I just think he had the most horrible knee injury I've ever seen. And I think he's somebody who should be a year-by-year guy because who knows with that knee. It could end at any time with the knee. I hope it doesn't.
Last year, that person probably could have been J.R. Smith. He was the sixth man of the year.
Oh, no. Last year, the person was J.R. Smith until he decided to elbow Jason Terry in the head and then go 2 for 80 in the Eastern Finals.
And then the reason why he's the answer to last year's question, let's look at how their season took fold, their offseason and started their season since that elbow.
Yeah.
He got suspended for the first 5 games. They signed his brother. That was a disaster. They start off a horrible year. He's having a bad season up until the past month or so. All of that actually led to them going to Phil Jackson and giving him the kind of money they gave him.
Maybe we should come up who's the best candidate for the J.R. Smith Award for somebody who is headed for a giant payday and could sabotage it with a bad player performance. I think Kyle Lowry's in that conversation, too. What if he stinks in round 1? And right now he's guaranteed, I would say, $50 million for 4 years. And if he stinks in round 1, that could flip on him.
Possibly. You know, you're only as faithful as your options. And if you have more teams willing to give it to you.
What am I saying? Lance is the answer to the J.R. Smith Award. What if Indiana loses in round 1 or round 2?
If they lose in round 1 or round 2, it'd be hard to justify giving him potentially one of those deals. But I think it's more of a style thing. And the way they chose to build their roster. They got Mahimi, they got Scola, they brought in Bynum, they got West.
He's still the 8th grader, though.
They got Hibbert.
Yeah.
Like, they're one of the only teams that have, like, 7 guys that are 6'10" or above.
Yeah.
That's the geometry of their roster. So I think regardless of what happened with this playoff run, I think they'll look to change their pace and their tempo.
Can we do a special bonus question here because it wasn't on the initial list? What do we expect from the Pacers?
Eastern Conference Finals, Game 7 in Miami. Roll the ball out and see what happens.
So you're the last guy in the Pacers corner, basically, who has a media job.
Because I'm not really ready to jump on the Nets just yet. Again, they got the highest payroll probably in NBA history. I expected them to actually do something, and I haven't seen KG. The Bulls, while they have roles, I, as a pundit, still feel like, man, if they had one more guy that could get you buckets, they could beat that team. Without Rose and without that guy, I just don't see it happening.
After the Pacers get eliminated in round 1 or round 2, if it happens, you can't then say they'll be fine if they're already out of the playoffs.
I agree.
I'm giving you a heads up.
I agree.
Like, they'll be fine will no longer work when they're all going home.
Like we say on the Birdmaster, if you don't like Larry, we don't like you. And if they don't get out of the first or second round, he's going to make wholesale changes. You can best believe that.
Well, this is something we talked about on Countdown recently.
And it won't involve Frank Vogel.
I don't think so either. I think they changed the roster because what happened, this is the first adversity they ever had. And as soon as they felt the adversity, the team self-combusted. Like, sorry, Paul George, you're going to end up on TMZ sometimes. You know, sorry, Ray Hibbert, there's going to be a month where guys in your team take bad shots. Sorry, guys, the schedule gets tough. Like, this team started pointing fingers, talking to reporters, calling people selfish. Even the legend called out Vogel a little bit. Like, you can't do that stuff when the spotlight's on you 6 months a year. That team was built around, they had these 5 guys who played awesome together. And every metric was like, look at their lineup, look at their plus-minus when they had these 5 guys together. And now all of a sudden those 5 guys aren't playing as well together. And I don't know if teams have been scouting them and figuring out ways to kind of make them unhappy. I think there was a little bit of Paul George, a little too much smoke blowing up the old butt. Started taking uncharacteristic weird shots.
But also, it's a weird space when the destination becomes more fun than the journey. And they're not having fun anymore because they're only going to be judged by the playoffs.
Did you just go philosopher on me?
I'm a highly intelligent young man when I choose to be. I just carry it back to look crazy.
Can I ask you a question that's a Fab Five plug, even though it's I don't mean it to be? That first year was so much fun, right? You made the finals. This is great. Baggy shorts, 5 freshmen. America rallies behind you. Then America kind of went against you the second year. Who are these guys? Why do these guys think? And everyone expected you to win the title. Was that a fun season?
There's a difference between hoping to win the title or bust. When you're hoping to win the title, you're having fun. You're playing free. You're the Golden State Warriors. You're the Houston Rockets.
It's kind of like us with when we did the preseason preview.
Yeah.
We were just having fun. Now we have all this pressure on us. People expect a great preview.
When the Miami Heat, Indiana Pacers, San Antonio Spurs, and OKC Thunder all went to training camp this year, they truly had championship or bust expectations. If the Clippers make it to the finals, that's a successful season. So there's a different level of pressure that comes with where you're expected to end up.
And I do think adversity is something that we forget when we talk about a series of years with a team, right? And you look at, like, the Drexler Blazers. MJ kills them in the 92 finals. It was a team Drexler was still in his prime. They still had good pieces. They were never the same after that. And Drexler was never the same after that.
And that's what I love about my Pistons Bad Boys teams.
Yeah.
And that's why I can't wait till the 30 for 30 documentary comes out, is we had adversity against the Celtics.
You had it 2 years in a row. 87, Bird steals the ball.
Bird steals the ball underneath the DJ.
88.
You know, I was still living in a house where you had a big TV that doesn't work, so it becomes furniture. So you put a smaller TV in a lamp on top of that TV. Back in the day, they were component sets.
Yeah.
And that TV ended up on the floor on that Johnny Most moment.
And then in 88, they're about to win the title, and Isaiah sprains his ankle. They get, in Game 7, one of the worst calls in a big moment ever. The little Lambert shove on Kareem. That was terrible. Then you have the ball with down 3 points with a couple seconds left. All the fans run off the court.
Yeah,
you can't get a shot
exactly.
Huh?
And Isaiah got fouled at the end.
And you had that traumatic Dantley trade that next season. They got through all that adversity, which is a lot of what that documentary is about. And I look at this Pacers, it's like, what's your adversity been? You're in a horrible conference. You have a Miami team that's dying to give you the number 1 seed. Paul George has a couple dumb things happen to him the internet makes a big deal out of. Hibbert's a little upset. Lance Stevenson's upset he didn't make the All-Star team. This is not real adversity. And you're folding from this?
And that's why when the smoke clears, we're going to be in Indiana, downtown, eating cocktail shrimp.
Scale 1 to 10, with 10 being the most probable. What are the odds Larry Legend sits his team down before the playoffs start?
10.
And says, everybody's going to shut the up here
Correct.
For 2 minutes. And I have something to say. Here's what I've seen the last 3 months. Here's what I don't like. Here are the stakes. Here's what's going to change. Here's what I don't want to hear. Here's what's going to happen in your career if you don't listen to me.
And these are the consequences.
None of you guys have to be here next year. None of you. Even you, Paul. If you guys let me down, I'm changing stuff. And see that guy over there, Frank Vogel? He's coming back next year. So you can blame him all you want in your head. He's coming back.
And you know what I love about this is that I was a part of a great niche in the Legend's career, and that's his 3 years of coaching. And to make it a 3 straight conference finals and Indiana's only trip to the NBA finals with him as our leader, you get a chance to have intimate conversations with him and see him have intimate conversations with a basketball team. And that's why the question you asked me is a 10, because he's going to sit them down and do exactly that.
And I bet he hasn't done it.
That's why I'm not panicking, because I know when it's going to happen.
And Frank Vogel's probably like, hey, Larry, you going to give that speech? He's like, hold on, Frank, hold on. It's coming. Just wait. Just trust me. The legend. Bill and Jalen's playoff preview. It makes me sad to ask this question, but we have to ask it. Wade, Duncan, or Dirk? Which star is the closest to not being a star anymore, Jalen?
We have to mention Kobe Bryant in this conversation. And the reason why
is he still in the league?
Because he still has 2 years, $49 million approximately left on his deal. These guys are playing this year. So even though Wade only played 51 games, he still has a chance to make a playoff run with the Heat. And Tim Duncan is playing on the team that has the best record in the entire league. Dirk deserves to be all NBA. He's still balling.
Are you okay with me voting Dirk number 5 for MVP?
I am. When you get a chance and you're bored out there, look at the Mavs roster, okay? We're not talking about the Sean Marion in Phoenix or the Vince Carter in Toronto or New Jersey.
Yeah, by the way, switch Dirk and Kevin Love. And I'm pretty sure Kevin Love's not winning 51 games with that Dallas roster.
Yes.
Because that's a worse roster than what he has. Better coach, but worse roster.
Correct. So the answer to this question, I'm going to go with the guy that plays the least games.
Dwayne Wade. As a perimeter player in the NBA, it's hard to stay around for as long as you see Kobe and Nash. There's a reason. Because the game gets faster, it gets more athletic, and you got to guard these guys. Like all of a sudden, he went from having to guard players that were probably 6'5" or 6'6" to now he's got to guard Bledsoe when they come to town in a small lineup. It's tough to be a perimeter guard, especially one that takes the ball to the hole so fearlessly like Dwayne Wade, and that acknowledges that I need to take the night off. A good example here is Mitch Richmond. Dwayne Wade was a much better player than Mitch Richmond.
Right.
Mitch Richmond just made the Hall of Fame. Not sure he should have when you consider Sidney Moncrief and Kevin Johnson and Paul Westphal, guys like that haven't made it. But when Mitch Richmond, when it ended for him, it was abrupt. And a little bit of that maybe had to do with he wasn't on the no-sugar diet like Nash, and maybe, who knows, his body was breaking down, whatever. But shooting guards, if you don't develop that second stage of your career, it can end pretty quickly. And the thing I see with Wade is he never became a good three-point shooter. And that was the one thing he never added to his game that I felt like could have extended it, and it could have saved him some miles. He still has to go to the basket, and he's got to rely on long twos to get his points.
How about this? Chris Bosh has made 2 times more threes this year than Dwayne Wade.
Dwayne Wade is really one of the worst three-point shooters from a volume standpoint in the history of the league.
When he's playing, he's still a 20-plus point scorer. He's still shooting over 50% from the floor. And I do think he's going to have an impact in this year's playoffs, because if I had to pick a finalist to come out of the East, it would be Miami, based on the fact I think he's going to still have it to close out this year.
Yeah.
But when you look up in 1 or 2 seasons, it's a lot easier to be a 7-footer like Dirk or Duncan to be still productive as opposed to Dwayne Wade.
The lack of free throw attempts, I think, is a concern, too, because that was such a big part of his game. He would get to it's like James Harden now. Like, if James Harden went from 10, 11 free throws a game to 3, and he wasn't shooting threes anymore, then what am I watching? Wade's always been, he's a great long two guy. Never really added the post-up game he needed, but I think Dirk's the furthest away. In my opinion, Dirk's got a couple more years at a high level.
But for all of those guys, to give them credit, their 48 minutes are still on par with some of their best seasons.
Duncan and Dirk especially, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Duncan retired if they won the title.
I don't blame him. He should. That'd be a smart move.
I wouldn't be surprised if Duncan retired if they didn't win the title.
Now, this time next year, we'll have to see if a Kobe Bryant is in this conversation.
Every player has an odometer. Karl Malone, indestructible. Laker season, finally gets hurt. Boom, out. Kevin Garnett hit 50, 60,000 miles. I forget what the number is. All of a sudden is down to playing 20 minutes a game. Jalen Rose, mid-2000s.
Yes, indeed.
You have so many miles on these.
Yes, indeed.
They're like tires.
Correct.
You can't fix it once it's gone.
And 2 things that remain undefeated, besides women and besides Father Time, because both of them are undefeated.
Yeah.
Streets and gravity. Undefeated.
What happens if Father Time dates women?
Father Time loses. Ask Adam and Eve.
That's it for Bill and Jalen's 2014 NBA preview. We hope you enjoyed it. We just did
Give the people what they want.
We just did 3 solid hours, so I hope that made up for the lack of the 4th Birdmaster, and we will see you on NBA Countdown. We're going to be on every weekend on ESPN and ABC every Sunday, most Fridays and a couple Saturdays. Check Jalen's Twitter feed, my Twitter feed. Check your DVR thing, but we are going to be on a lot, and you can look forward to watching my weight dwindle as the playoff goes along and then spike back up if we're in Texas or San Antonio. And last thing, we want to thank Axe for bringing peace and harmony to our 2014 playoff preview.
Let me tell you what I truly like about Axe. They're a sponsor of ours. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
I thought you were going to say peace and harmony reminded you of two people at a gentleman's club. That
Don't get fired.
You might have paid. Can I get peace and harmony in stage number 3?
All right, before we go, I want to give a shout out to Stamps.com, our longtime sponsor of the BS Report, one of them anyway. If you go to Stamps.com, click on their special offer for radio and podcast companies. You type in BS, and you get a whole bunch of stuff. You get money off stamps. You get a scale. You get a whole bunch of things. So check that out, Stamps.com.
Target % off. Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.
Hey, what you got there, Golick?
The new Subway Chipotle chicken melt with guacamole.
Man, that looks good.
Yeah, this new guac is really bringing the flavor.
Got one for me too, right?
Well, yes and no. Mostly no. Well, really, all no.
Try the irresistible new Subway Chipotle chicken melt with guacamole, juicy grilled chicken strips with Monterey cheddar, Chipotle Southwest sauce, and new guacamole made from ripe Hass avocados with just a hint of jalapeno. Subway, eat fresh.